Newly promoted Nationals MP Keith Pitt has denied he's a sellout, describing the suggestion as offensive. That's despite the minister being promoted to cabinet to spruik net zero emissions, a policy that he's long campaigned against. Live now to Jonathan Lee. This is the type of thing that voters hate. I guess Keith Pitt is arguing, Jonathan Lee, that he's now bound by a cabinet. It wasn't his preferred decision, but he'll go with it.
Yeah, that's right, Laura. I suppose we remember what happened to Bill Shorten in 2019 when he told one thing to voters in Melbourne and another thing to miners at Gladstone in North Queensland. And there's a sense that the National Party here is trying to walk both sides of the street, campaigning previously against net zero, senior members cabinet campaigning against it within their own parliament. But in Keith Pitt's position, he's now been promoted to cabinet. He's gone from being just a minister to a cabinet minister, really to spruik net zero as resources minister. You put the question to him fairly bluntly in an interview a short time ago, and I think it's well worth having another listen to.
Can you just explain to a public, because I think, you're a Queenslander, you know that constituents hate the most when politicians are disingenuous. What do you say to your constituents this morning that makes you, some would call you a sellout?
Well, look, firstly, that's offensive. I mean, this is how things work in a democracy. We have a discussion, the majority view prevails, regardless of what individuals may or may not put forward.
Now, Laura, for the better part of the last week, we've talked about what the National Party has sought in return for their support. That information is gradually being drip-fed to the media, part of which appears to be the Productivity Commission conducting a report into the regions, working out the impact and the impost of net zero to the poorest in Australia's community in many regards. That will be handed to Parliament every 5 years. It isn't a pause mechanism, though. It will still continue to carry out the government's pledges in decarbonising the economy. Matt Canavan is an outspoken senator. For the National Party, we should point out, he's maintained that he hasn't been for sale and isn't for sale when it comes to opposing net zero. This is what he had to say on Sky.
Well, look, I used to work for the Productivity Commission, got a great respect for them, but they're an advisory body. They can't necessarily change anything. And we have this system in the case of the Murray-Darling Basin. There's 5 yearly reviews by the Productivity Commission of the impact of the Murray-Darling Basin. And the impact of that policy has destroyed many rural and remote communities. And I don't think those communities really care if there's a ruler measuring how far they've fallen.
Yeah, he makes a good point about the Murray-Darling Basin there. Now 17,000 kilometres away, Boris Johnson is talking up the Morrison government's carbon commitments, but he's a bit worried.
It's been a big couple of weeks. Australia, I suppose, has gone from being criticised by those in the UK, even the royal family, for our lack of action on reducing carbon. Boris Johnson is now talking about our heroic response and hoping in many regards that we can be a leader in the region, encouraging other nations to come on board with net zero. Let's have a listen.
It's going to be very, very tough, this summit, and I'm very worried. I think that they are starting to see how urgent this is. I think the Australians have just decided to do that. Now, that was actually very difficult for Australia because Australia is very heavily dependent on coal, on lots of carbon producing industries, and they've done a heroic thing, the Australians, in getting to that commitment.
Laura, it should also be pointed out that Boris Johnson and the UK government has a lot at stake when it comes to the Glasgow Climate Summit. They need it to be a success. And when it comes to today's question time, I understand the government can expect to be peppered on not just its net zero commitments, but what it's going to cost. And by that I mean not the same questions which were put to Bill Shorten, but what the deal is going to cost with what they've signed up to the National Party. So they can expect some questions there, Laura.
And perhaps that question that you put to Bill Shorten should be put to the government now. The policies are almost the same, Jonathan Lee. Thanks so much. We'll speak soon.